Let's start with Joe Biden and his both sides moment. It's amazing how the media kind of moved right past this, but here's what he said the other day. This was Monday about whether he condemns what's happening in response to Israel.
Protesters, do you condemn the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses?
I condemn the anti-Semitic protests. That's why I've set up a program to deal with that. I also condemn those who don't understand what's going on with the Palestinians.
Huh? What? What program has he set up to deal with the anti-Semitic? What program? I'm not sure what he's even referring to, and I'm not sure, Jesse, he knows either.
Yeah, it seemed like sort of an off-the-cuff comment. That I don't know. That one didn't bother me that much. I mean, I think he's trying to carve a middle path with a lot of people yelling at him from different directions with the election coming up. I guess if you interpret it as there's anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses, which there are, but he's also, I interpret it, Katie might disagree, as trying to signal some sympathy for Palestinians stuck in Gaza.
Yeah,
but Biden, I mean, Trump got no such benefit of the doubt when he was trying to say with his so-called both sidesism on Charlottesville. He was talking about the people who were out there mad about the tearing down of statues. And he had made that clear, but the media refused. They refused. They wanted to make him in support of the Tiki Torch white supremacists.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that the media treats Biden and Trump differently. I think that's been well established, but I also don't think it's really particularly fair to compare what was happening at Charlottesville to this current conflict. I mean, there is shades of anti-Semitism in both of them, for sure. I can see the parallels, but I think Jesse's right. Biden is trying to thread this very complex position, which is that there are concerns about anti-Semitism on these protests, but these protests are also legitimate. They are protesting the slaughter of civilians in Gaza, and he's trying to not alienate anybody. It is a difficult position to be in. I do not envy him.
I mean, when you say the slaughter of civilians, that's just so without context. Israel's military to civilian death rate is 1-to-1. Ours in Afghanistan, sure. Ours in Iraq was well above that. It was, I think, 4-to-1. I've heard as much as 10-to-1. So I don't think slaughter is the right term. That suggests indiscriminate murdering of civilians, which is not what's happening.
I don't think that we should take America's actions in Iraq or Afghanistan as the gold standard. It is complicated for sure, but I mean, there are children being slaughtered in Israel. There's no question about that. And did Hamas start this? Yes, they absolutely did. But it still remains the fact that there are women and children being slaughtered and starving every day in Gaza.
I've had a lot of trouble like figuring out where I stand with this as a Jew. I was so disturbed in the immediate wake of October 7th by the utter lack of any sort of empathy, like the inability to take one day just to say murder is bad, kidnapping is bad. There were celebrations. Yeah, it was despicable. And I think there's a subset of these protesters who clearly feel that way. I just think like as a Jew, that needs to be leavened with empathy for what it would be like to be stuck in Gaza right now. And I genuinely don't know what the answer is.
Well, maybe if they release the hostages, it would get a lot better for them.
Yeah, but they is not some family starving in Gaza. I don't think Gazans want.
Who elected Hamas?
Well, hardly anyone currently alive in Gaza, which is a very young place, elected Hamas. And Hamas's election came.
Jesse, the Palestinians are pro-Hamas. They elected Hamas. They chose these people to lead them, whose charter is the destruction of Israel. They've been supporting the terror attacks on Israel for a long, long time. They've been pushing propaganda on their own children. We've seen the UN films of them talking about how they'll celebrate killing Jews. We heard them calling back home, some of these Hamas warriors on the day of 10/7 to mom and dad, like, yay, I killed 10 Jews. And the parents, instead of being like, what? Oh my God, yay, good for you. We're so proud. I mean, let's not pretend that this is just a group of very peaceful, loving people who somehow got pulled into conflict with Israel.
There was a good article by Graham Wood, who actually saw some of the early footage of that. He talked about, these murderers or kidnappers calling back home, and their parents were actually worried for them. And like, why are you doing that? I think there's Palestinian people, there's a mix of them. There's obviously some awful violent ones, but I don't think there's anything that really justifies. I'll put it this way. If you're going to do military operations that kill a lot of women and children, I hope at the end of it, there's a good outcome that will lead to lasting security for everyone. And I'm just worried things aren't headed that way.
Well, I mean, look, it's not that I have no empathy for the dying children in Gaza. It's that I blame Hamas for all of them,
you can still,
not Israel.
You can blame Hamas and understand that this started on October 7th, that they are to blame, while also feeling the true victims of this, besides the Israeli people who were slaughtered, are the people of Gaza. They are suffering under Hamas. They are suffering under this current assault. And frankly, I don't think students protesting at Columbia or Yale or Princeton are doing anything to alleviate their suffering. In fact, I think they're probably distracting from their suffering, because
nor do they actually care about their suffering. I don't think they actually care about Palestine at all.
I think they do. I think they're just.
Do they care about oppressed Muslims? Really? I don't remember any of these protests happening after the satellite video came out of the suffering Uyghurs in China. Not one. Not one student protest. Not a camp. Not a tent. Nothing.
I do think there's something of a double standard where anything Israel does is much more important than anything other countries does. And I've noticed that. But like being a pervert for nuance, as we call ourselves on the show, it's also, you can understand Israel is a close ally, would give them a lot of aid. The whole situation is really heartbreaking. And I think these kids are deluded. So at Columbia, Katie and I were debating on our podcast whether Columbia did the right thing arresting some of them. Part of the problem is apparently the administration went to them to negotiate, and the kids said no until the entire University of Columbia, this billion-dollar institution, divests entirely from Israel. We are staying put. So I'm not sure what choice that leaves the administrators, because it's obviously not the case that a major institution is just going to divest from an entire country like Israel. It's delusional.
Well, the other problem with arresting them is that they have now turned these students into heroes and martyrs. They inflamed this protest. And I'm speculating here, but from the outside, I wonder if maybe the president of Columbia is thinking about what happened to Claudine Gay at Harvard and Liz McGill at Penn, and thinking, I don't want to lose my job over this. I'm not going to let allegations of anti-Semitism derail my career. So she responds with force. They arrest 100 students. And then now those students are heroes, and that has just inflamed this entire thing. And now it's spreading to other campuses. On the upside, however, if they keep this on campuses, maybe they will not block the Brooklyn Bridge. There are some upsides to this.
There we go.
This university president is damned if she does and damned if she doesn't, because she actually did call in the cops to try to make some arrests and clear the campus and let, order restore so that kids could go to college per the contract that has been struck between their families and the college. And what's happening now is university Senate leaders today are meeting with her, and she might get censured for calling the cops. They're having an emergency meeting. They're hoping it will help calm faculty members, many of whom remain furious over the decision to call in the cops, who made more than 100 arrests last Thursday. And yeah, she's looking at a possible censure allegation for doing that. Of course, the University Senate is made up. I was on the University Senate when I was at my college at Syracuse. It's made up of faculty, students, as well as alumni and administrators. So she's going to get in trouble for trying to do something, the same as you point out she would have gotten in trouble had she done nothing.
Yeah, she's either in trouble with the faculty and students, or she's in trouble with Congress. She's screwed either way.
Yeah, don't be the president of Columbia. Really, I mean, it was an obvious.
Anywhere.
We'll do our best. We were going to take over that role, but now we're not going to. We decline.
I feel like there are still universities where you can go for sanity. I realize like a bunch of people at our school now are applying to and hoping to get into like University of Florida. They see this as just a sane place where you can go and you can get a classical education, and you don't have to be a leftist. You don't have to be suffering from woke indoctrination everywhere. And they know that protests like this would be cleaned up very quickly because order. And it's not just like protests. Okay, we just had Heather on. She was not tolerant of protests. She really doesn't want to see these snot-nosed kids out there telling us their know-nothing thoughts. But it is an American tradition, especially on college campuses. I don't mind protest, but the camps, the anti-Semitic slogans, screaming, threatening things at Jews, forming these human chains that then follow the Jews and don't let the Jews cross over into their territory, that's a hard no. That's got to stop. And I would absolutely send law enforcement in to arrest and remove anybody doing that on a campus I ran. No? Am I wrong?
No, you're right. I mean, I think everything is so hysterical online that you're supposed to have one rigid opinion. Either you're for the protesters or against the protesters. I think the right answer is like, yeah, protesting is an American tradition. It's a college tradition. You should probably operate with a soft hand. But as soon as protesters are blocking people's access to places, let alone these anti-Zionist human chain, which was bizarre footage, I don't know. I think if you're going to be a protester and do that, you should accept the possibility that you're going to be arrested. That's sort of the deal, right? You protest, you break the law, and you agree you might get arrested. I'm not sure what the point is otherwise.
Yes, yeah, I mean, right. Like, imagine if they did this in front of Starbucks, Katie. You know, the cops would be down there so fast removing them. Why does it make it okay just because they're doing it to Jews on the quad?
Right. Well, I mean, Columbia is a private school. They aren't bound by the First Amendment, but I think they should follow First Amendment guidelines, which a lot of us have been advocating for years now. So, you know, violence is not protected, incitement is not protected, true threats are not protected, discriminatory harassment is not protected. So when you surround a group of Jewish students and chant, "Go back to Poland," you should be treated as if you had surrounded a group of Black students and treated and chanted, "Go back to Africa." But
that's what's so, I didn't mean to talk over you, but part of what's complicated about this is there's also these videos from Broadway outside Columbia, which is like any protest like this is going to attract every lunatic in a 50-mile radius. And I do think some of the anti-Semitic stuff, I'm not justifying it, genuinely comes from non-students, and Columbia has no jurisdiction over non-students. Sorry,
some
Katie,
of this does look very,
right.
To borrow a term, like astroturfy. I mean, a lot of this does look like outside agitators funding it. I'm like, why? Weird. Well, why are all the tents the same color, the same kind of tent?
Oh, I have the answer to that. I was talking to a friend about it.
What is the answer?
Do you know the name Fergie Chambers?
Oh, no.
No. Yeah. Who's Fergie? Fergie?
Fergie Chambers is a legendary. He's an heir to a major fortune, but
the Cox family.
The Cox family. He moved to New Hampshire to not have to pay taxes, as good lefties do. He's a real commie. I don't throw that term around lightly.
Let me tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. Leo was on a road trip and came across a Doberman. This dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Leo rescued the dog and named him Delta. Sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help, and this inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, a home. April marks 45 years since Leo rescued Delta. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions. If you would like caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner because there are tax benefits here. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with your advisor. We call dog a man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.